Hello, I'm Riley, and this is the Diegetic Advancement Podcast. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode 27. Today, I'm mainly going to play some calls and respond to them. I have calls from Daniel of Bandits Keep, John from the Red Dice Diaries, and Jason from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. In addition, we'll have our regular segments, a gaming update, which will be short this week, and content shoutouts. Between the sets didn't poll well, understandably. The audio quality was very poor, so I apologize for that. I'm very happy that I have a new working microphone so that I can return to regular recording. And with that, why don't we jump straight into the calls?
Hey Riley, Jason here. Just listened to episode 26. Interesting format change. Maybe it's because I'm in the car and I've got the road noise and all. It was a little harder for me to stay with you during that, but that again might be me and the road noise. I wouldn't stop doing it yet on my account. I wouldn't stop doing it on my account regardless. But let me hear it a few more episodes to see if I get the same experience or if this was a one-off. Shadowdark, the staying in initiative thing can be good. It depends on your players. I've played in games where we have stayed in initiative order for the entire game. These are ICRPG sessions, and it works. It is a little more gamey because you can't just blurt out, "Hey, I want to do this. I'm going to go grab that," because you have to wait for your turn, right? So the group walks into a room, but now you go in turn order what they do in the room, kind of thing. But it does bring out the players and give players that kind of are more in the background. It gives them a chance to do things, and it stops the one or two players from monopolizing the session. So there are gives and takes to it. I don't know. As far as some of the other things you mentioned, yeah, I kind of agree with you on the stat spread for the attributes. I think a flatter modifier is better. Yeah, that's something we see in some of the older games. But all in all, very interesting. There was something else you said that I was going to respond to, and I don't know what it was now. So I guess maybe if I remember, I'll call you back. If not, hopefully somebody else will mention it. But take care of yourself. Keep up the great work. And I will talk to you soon.
Yeah, that was Jason of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. Thank you very much for listening and for your call. On the format change, it's definitely a one-off, mainly instituted to handle the lack of a working microphone. Though recording on the go or whilst I'm doing other things is something I do want to do. It's just going to help me get more content out, or at least more consistent. I might need to invest in a portable microphone to help with that. Because, yeah, the audio quality was poor. Editing it was difficult. I had to edit out a bunch of basically unusable audio and clean up what I could. It was definitely more rambly and jumpy than my other content. At this point, I might sprinkle some of that sort of stuff into an episode. It was never the intention to replace the regular episodes with that format. And definitely not after the experiment didn't go well. But we'll see how I choose to implement that in the future. Thank you for listening and persevering all the same. Shadowdark. Yeah, the initiative. I'm definitely going to give it a go, and it certainly has advantages. My main issue with it is I'm just not sure if it'll run well at my table, and it's not really something I want to police. Managing Spotlight can be difficult. I see a lot in discourse online that it's considered one of the roles the GM needs to take on, which I disagree with. The players should, which includes the GM, manage Spotlight. Offloading it to a mechanic or procedure is a good idea, especially where the caller has gone out of favor. I think that role kind of did this previously. And I can see it being a good replacement for that. But yeah, I guess you'll hear my update soon as to whether it works for my group. Thank you very much for the call, Jason. Glad you're back on the air. It was a great show, and you can skip forward to the content shout out to hear my recommendation for that. Okay, on to our next caller.
Hey there, Riley. It's John here from the Diaries podcast. Just been listening to your episodes 25 and 26. I'm glad you're enjoying the Baramaze game, dude, and I hope that it carries on running for a long time and we carry on getting some really cool sessions out of it. I'm really having a blast running it at the moment, even though I'm sort of settling into the Shadowdark system as we're playing. And I'm sure, like yourself, I'll probably find some things that I like and some things I don't like. That's just the nature of the beast. Anyway, I find it really interesting what you were saying about potentially repositioning BX as a skill-based system. And one of the things I thought I'd mention to you, in case you're not aware of it, apologies if you are, but you might like to check out Lamentations of the Flame Princess. There's a free no-art version available. I think it's on drive-thru. And instead of a rogue or a thief or whatever, that has a specialist in it. And the specialist has a series of skills based on a D6. You know, the traditional rogue ones, the open door stuff and whatever that you tend to get in BX. However, the special, and everyone has access to those skills. However, the specialist has a number of points per level they can put into those skills to effectively make them a little bit better than the average bear when it comes to passing those skill checks. And maybe something like that would be a useful starting block for yourself if you were looking to sort of refitting BX as a skill-based system, because Lamentations seems to sort of be doing what you were talking about. Anyway, I just thought I'd make the suggestion, dude. Very much enjoyed the episode. Keep up the good work, and I will speak to you soon.
Okay, thank you very much for the call, John. John is the host of the Red Dice Diaries podcast and the excellent GM of the Shadowdark open table Baramaze game I've been playing in, which has been a blast. I'll have just completed another session when this episode releases, and Corden, the level 2 priest, will hopefully still be alive. Okay, BX as a skill-based game. I've started to write down my thoughts for making this an episode. I'm definitely going to have a shout out to Lamentations. It's a great implementation of the Thief, in my opinion, probably my favorite. I've also got to shout out a product for building custom classes in BX. Combining the two of those together, using the idea of the specialist spending points on skills and getting a certain number of points when they level up, and some of the math from the class builder document, you can create a skill-based BX. You remove class, you get points, right? That is one of the options I plan to present, which is similar to what I talked about doing in one of my early episodes, but I plan to present a couple other options as well. You'll have to wait and see what they end up being, because I'm not even 100% sure yet myself. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, John, for the call and for running a great Shadowdark game. It might be interesting to compare notes if I run into any hiccups running it myself. Okay, last but not least, take it away.
Hey Riley, Daniel from Bandits, keep calling in about the gym episode. So I like the idea that you're at the gym and doing the thing. It's kind of fun, the setting and talking about that. So I like the segment a lot. As you probably know, the audio quality was not great. That's the only problem. I've had that problem recording myself when I'm on my phone and stuff. Sometimes it just doesn't sound as good, distorted, or just, not loud enough or whatever. So that can be a little difficult. So I like the idea of the segment. I like the gym part of it. I would, if there's a possible, somehow get a little bit better audio quality there. That would make it really cool. But I mean, as a segment to throw in sometimes, or one segment a week, I think it's fine. If the whole show became that, it might be hard for me personally to listen to because of the sound quality. So there's my my evaluation on that, since you asked. As far as the rest of it, Shadowdark, interesting. I'm curious what you come up with and what you think. I feel I don't agree on all. I shouldn't say I don't agree. I don't have the same trepidations. I have different ones towards Shadowdark personally, which is why I haven't tried it. I don't think that it would do anything for me different, which is kind of, you said some people had asked, maybe I even said it, than games I already have. And I've kind of reached a point where there's 2 reasons, maybe 3 reasons why I play a new game. One is that I think because you won't know until you play it. It will do something for me that a current game that I'm playing doesn't do, or that I don't like, and it'll just kind of solve that problem instead of having to house rule or manipulate or whatever. Two is that I think that the setting or the game system is just interesting and I want to try it. So an example of that would be I'm playing Alien currently, or is it Aliens? I think it's called Alien, from that Free League, I think. Honestly, the game itself, the system does nothing for me, but playing in the alien world is kind of interesting. So I'm enjoying it for a short period. Would I play a massively long game of it? Probably not personally, but it was cool to be able to play it and, see how they handle those creatures and the lore and stuff. So pretty cool. It has the same system as Coriolis, which is why I said I wouldn't really run a long game in it. I'd rather run a long game in Coriolis, which is much more open-ended in my opinion. But anyways, I digress. The third reason would be because I think it's going to be easier for people to play. That is to say, I've got a bunch of 5e players going into Shadowdark, and I want to play something that's got a more slimmed down feel. I would lean towards something like Shadowdark or like Index Card RPG, which are both basically 5e cores, right? With simplified, they just don't have all the extra, right? I mean, they're basically set a target number, roll a d20, meet or beat it, adding your ability scores or whatever. So they're both the same game. They're of different levels. I think I would say, although I'd be curious what Jason says about this because he's definitely more versed in Index Card RPG. I would say Index Card RPG is a little more heroic, and Shadowdark seems to be a little bit less heroic if you want to look just based on the stats and stuff. So, but both are basically 5e cores. So that would give me a reason to run that game, right? If I'm playing with a group that I only want to play 5e or I don't want to learn something new, then I think that that would be a game I'd choose. And I don't currently have a group like that, which is why it doesn't seem to offer me anything new. Now, you might be thinking, people listening, well, what about new people generally to RPGs? Isn't it easier, as I hear over and over again, if there's a single mechanic? I don't think so. I don't go to 5e, I don't go to Index Card RPG, I don't go to any of those single mechanic D20 systems when I'm teaching new players. I usually do Swords and Wizardry. I find it's a really good system for teaching new people because it is very simple, but at the same time, very robust. And I've yet to meet somebody who was completely confused by that saving throws. I'm trying to think of some things you roll low, I guess, searching, you roll low, and saving throws, you roll high. I don't know. I actually find that in percentile systems, because I think the Thief uses a percentile there. I'd have to go look at it again. It's been a while. People say, well, it's weird you have to roll under there. But I think most people, if I said you have a 50% chance and they picked up dice to roll, they would assume 1 through 50. I don't think that's something you have to explain to people. I think the opposite's actually much more confusing. So anyways, that's a long message to say that I'm really curious to see how Shadowdark plays out at your table. And also, I guess I'd love to hear more about the reasoning, right, to play Shadowdark or to play DCC or to play anything you're playing. Why are you choosing these games? And is it for one of the three reasons I said or a completely different reason? I'd love to know. I'm loving the show. As always, I will talk to you soon.
Thank you very much for calling in, Daniel, and for listening, of course. And for the feedback on the change in format, the segment, definitely helps me know what to put in the show and how to structure it. I think it affirms my plans for what to do with that segment in the future. I think use sparingly and perhaps get a better portable microphone. Again, as I mentioned in the response to Jason, I'd like to be able to do it, but the audio quality and the listening experience did suffer too much. So I'll continue to experiment with that and see how I can make that work. Okay, I'm going to jump around your call a little bit. Towards the end, you talk about the complexity of a game for new players, and yes, I agree that multiple different systems isn't necessarily a barrier or difficult for new players. I think it could be as those systems get more and more complicated, but certainly for Swords and Wizardry, OD&D, BX, I don't think they're in that category, and they were definitely contenders for what I was going to run my game with, and they might be what I move to post Shadowdark. Okay, then you ask, why Shadowdark? You want to hear about that, and I'll definitely be talking about that and how my experience is with Shadowdark in future episodes as I get stuck in. And that is one of the reasons. It's a popular new game, and I want to try it out, right? I'm planning a fairly, not short, but definitely limited campaign, so I'm just going to pick it up and take it for a spin. But it's a really great question for Shadowdark, why I'm going to play, and you present a good list for why you might play a game. And to restate those, one, a game is an improvement over a current game that you're playing. It fixes some issue. Two, the setting or system is interesting. I suppose that being different from your current game or games is sort of a qualifier there. Otherwise, it might overlap the first reason. Or three, it's easier for the players or for new players, which you then go on to talk about. So, some of my reasons fit into those categories. I already mentioned one of the reasons being curiosity, which would fit into your second reason. Let's start by talking about reason one. So, we were playing DCC, and whilst it's not a complex game, myself and my players did struggle with some of the mechanics. The main impact this had was on time, which I have a limited supply of with a almost 1-year-old. Prep for me took a bit longer. There was some slowness at the table, which impacted a short session. Additionally, some spell results were a bit too unpredictable. Sometimes this is fun. It's definitely the strength of DCC. But other times a spell can produce completely different effects, depending on the result, which makes it hard for players to kind of have a predictable effect. Now, Shadowdark has a strong DCC influence. A lot of the rules and mechanics I might call DCC light, and these could solve some of the issues my group was facing, whilst maintaining some of the same feel. As a side note, I do think there is room for a really good DCC light game. I know there are some things out there. I might be thinking of sharp swords and sinister spells, but it might be something that I take a crack at myself one day. And so, experimenting with some of the games that have that influence might help with that. To the third reason, I do think it's easier for players. My players are fairly new to RPGs. They've played a little bit of 5e, if anything at all, and now some DCC with me. Whilst I agree having multiple mechanics in BX or OD&D isn't more complicated, I think they could be more intimidating. Shadowdark has an excellent quick start, which is very easy to digest, has good online tools for character generation, among other things, to help players get started. I also started this group to bring people into the hobby. A large portion of that hobby is 5e, and so I see Shadowdark having a bit of that 5e core as an advantage. Not that it could bring 5e players in, which is sort of its selling point, but the opposite. My players could join another game because they find that RPGs are fun, and that game would likely be 5e, just statistically. And perhaps they would not feel as lost in the system, having played Shadowdark instead of coming from BX or OD&D. Okay, I'll stop there for now. I'll continue to talk about Shadowdark as we get into actually playing. The first session is up next week, and I still have a little bit of prep to do, which is really the only update I have for this week. I have 2 games scheduled in as a player, which will happen between me recording this and it being published. One of which is the aforementioned Shadowdark Baramaze game, which John is running. And then on Tuesday, I'm running a Session 0 character creation and game intro for my Shadowdark game. I've been doing some prep for it, finally settled on a concept and have started to build that out. I won't talk about it here just yet because I don't want to spoil any of the players. And as soon as I hit stop on this recording, I'll be switching over and doing some solo play with Forbidden Lands, which you'll likely hear about in a future episode as well. So let's close the show out with some content shoutouts. First up, Jason debuts his second season of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast with a great episode. The first half of that is a panel discussion of his players from a After the Bomb game that he's running, which was very interesting to listen to. Go check that out. Tim Shorts of Gothride Manor This is an episode on what he learnt from running Shadowdark. It's very topical with what I've been discussing on my show. The next episode of Euphonious in Dungeon is out. This episode's focusing on golems and orcs. A really interesting episode of the podcast, but also of the Dungeon Delicious show. Over on YouTube, RedMageGM has posted a video detailing an overview of his session 0 of note. I found it really interesting and a great little tip on how he handles player backgrounds to get players tied into the world and the story, and to give them a sort of a prompt for a simple and easy backstory. That's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you very much for my callers. The details for all of that, plus the content shoutouts, will be in the show notes. Next week might be some more details on my Shadowdark game. Could be some more details on my solo play. We'll see what happens. Okay, this will lead us into the outro. Bye for now. I'd love to hear your feedback. You can reach me via Spotify, SpeakPipe, Discord, or email. Those details, along with everything I've talked about today, are in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.